Now, today marks the first court appearance of that aforementioned new target of the Jack Smith probe. Trump co-defendant Carlos de Oliveira walked into court this morning, arraigned on 4 charges. Now, he does not have a Florida attorney yet, so he couldn't formally plead. He is out on bond under the standard orders not to discuss this case with his co-defendants, Trump or the other co-defendant there, Walt Nauta. Now, all 3 of these defendants are accused of obstruction crimes. Now, Special Counsel Smith could legally convict Donald Trump without these charges. But he's bringing them because, 1, he thinks he has the evidence to convict on them. That's, of course, what prosecutors are supposed to do. And 2, prosecutors use these kind of charges to try to show a jury, to really emphasize something, to really underscore situations where they argue the defendants knew what they were doing was criminal. In this case, that Trump knew the espionage charges were indeed crimes, not some honest mistake. For example, Donald Trump has publicly claimed that he had every right to those documents or that he'd already declassified them. The evidence shows that's false. That's sort of part 1. But what I'm telling you tonight, and the reason why this person that we've never heard of, who's not a senior official, matters, is that Smith is using these newer charges to go further, using the obstruction charges to hammer that if Trump honestly thought those things, that it was already declassified, or that he had the right to them, then he would not have scrambled around moving and hiding boxes of documents all over his property, hiding them in literal bathrooms, nor would he go to such desperate lengths to try to delete the footage. Because again, if your argument is, hey, I already declassified this stuff, or I never thought I was doing anything wrong, or I really genuinely thought I had this stuff, that is a type of defense. They say ignorance is no defense to all crimes under law, but you can certainly argue that the prosecutors are missing that corrupt or criminal intent if you genuinely believe that this was your stuff, for example. But if you believe that, you wouldn't be running around trying to delete all the footage that just showed you had what you said was your stuff. Now, there's a larger question of why these charges just dropped. Prosecutors can add charges any time, but there's an implication here that, well, something's new. Or Smith would have included it, of course, in the first charges. And CNN has new reporting tracking how a different unindicted Trump aide, dubbed Trump Employee 4 by the DOJ, was targeted for indictment and seemed to at least cough up some new or damning information. Now, this is an individual, this staffer had a fairly routine role. He oversees the surveillance cameras on the property. But after Trump's June indictment, Smith hit this employee with his own target letter. The employee met with investigators after the indictment, the first one against Trump. The evidence shows his testimony and information supports some of the new allegations. Now, we don't know yet whether he's fully and formally cooperating with the DOJ or doing something else or just answering questions. But we do know there's no public indication that he's been indicted. So it looks like he was at least spared in these new charges in what we're calling the superseding indictment. And this particular employee, Taveras, faced some secret kind of efforts by the other guy I mentioned, Oliveira, to try to get the footage deleted like Trump wanted, which, again, Smith is going to use not just as one more little detail, but as the kind of icing on the cake of how this was a criminal plot through and through. So the reporting shows demands that the conversation they were having stayed between the 2 of them, and then a reference to how Trump, the boss, wanted the server deleted, which Taveras didn't think he could actually do, at least not without the supervisor of security. Now, that's kind of an internal rule. However, they do that at Mar-a-Lago, and the other employee tried to override it by insisting, quote, the boss wanted the server deleted. So what are you going to do? Now, when you ask a question like, what are we going to do? Of course, it's not just a question. He's asking the other guy at Mar-a-Lago, how do we get this done? Because we got to do it, because crime or no crime, the boss wants it done. And you know what they say, the fish rots from the head and stuff like that? Well, you can see in these exposed exchanges how Trump aides are doing their version of trying to talk like him, or as they put it, the boss, trying to phrase what might be illegal demands as a question or amusing. What are we going to do? Trying to stake out a little bit of deniability, spin or lies, even in this conversation that the employee also demanded to stay secret. Now, that furtive plot failed. This footage you're hearing about was not deleted, just as the discussions among them to keep it secret did not stay secret. And Jack Smith has the videos. just as the January 6th plot, of course, infamously failed. It caused much damage, but it did fail in its objective. The objective of the conspiracy was overthrowing President-elect Biden's transition. But there's actually nothing unusual about that either when it comes to prosecution, because prosecution is about evidence, the criminal mindset that I mentioned, people's efforts to break the law and whether they get caught. It is not a performance review of who's the best criminal or who's the most secretive criminal or who's the most effective at pulling off all their plans. In other words, and Donald Trump may be the poster child for this, like many other criminal conspiracies, sheer incompetence, not actually getting the job done, not actually deleting the video, is no defense in court. Being bad at the conspiracy, not actually even getting the footage deleted, that doesn't help any of these defendants, right?
That doesn't help them at all. And what's funny is, that Trump came out with a statement over the weekend saying it's complete fiction because they got the tapes. Obviously misses the point from a legal perspective that it doesn't matter if the means or the objective of the conspiracy wasn't achieved. What matters is that they undertook a plot to do something that was contrary to the law. And so it's kind of befuddling as to why he comes out with these statements. I mean, from a legal perspective, they're insane, and I think a defense lawyer's nightmare that his client is out there making such statements. But you got to think that the method to his madness in making statements like that is to plant a seed with just needs one juror to think that it's all hogwash, and he could achieve nullification. I mean, other than that, I don't know why he would be out there making those statements, because, as you say, the fact that they didn't achieve the objective is of it doesn't mean anything.
Neil?
So basically, Ari, I think Donald Trump is in deep doo-doo, to use the technical legal term. And that's because, just to back up from what David was saying, you have both new people being subject to the indictment and new charges. So we already knew that two people were indicted before. That was Donald Trump and Walt Nauta, his valet. Now there's two more people that you just mentioned, Carlos de Oliveira and Yuscil Taveras. And de Oliveira has been charged, and Taveras, as you just noted, hasn't been charged. So what's going on here? Well, first of all, the prosecutors have done this superseding indictment, which is an updated set of charges. And it's just replacing the old set of charges with the new up-to-date information. That's something prosecutors do routinely when they have new information and also when they want to put pressure on someone. And here, if you are Walt Nauta right now or Carlos de Oliveira, you're looking over at this guy, Yuscil Taveras, who's not been indicted. He's mentioned in the indictment. He's part of this scheme to try and cover up and destroy the tapes and the evidence, but he hasn't been charged. What that's signaling, I think, is that the prosecutor is saying, look, you cooperate with the government, you give us and tell us what you know, we're going to treat you differently. That's what we call flipping. And that seems like what's going on here. He may not have flipped. We don't have any information that he's formally cooperated, but it's a signal from Jack Smith that says, we've got the goods on you, Donald Trump. We've got you dead to rights in a bunch of different ways. Obviously, Trump has the presumption of innocence and he'll mount a defense. But as David says, so far, he hasn't mounted any actual legal defense.
And David, what is your view of that same question about that potential witness?
I agree. It's clear. What I think what happened here is that he had a lawyer that may have been paid for by the Trump organization, and then later switched lawyers, which is also one way that the government may use to show that why he changed his story. Is that he wasn't under the same pressure he was before, which has been an issue for some of the other witnesses we've heard, not just with these criminal cases, but also the January 6th investigation. But I agree with Neil. I mean, it's clear indication that this guy has come forward and given what the government believes to be truthful information and information that they can corroborate. And it's spelled out quite well in the indictment, step by step, including the emojis on the phone, which they're going to be presenting to the jury, the communications and so forth. So there's a lot of corroboration for him, assuming he's a witness. And I think that's the only assumption you can reach, having read the indictment. So I agree.
Yeah. And then, Neil, there hasn't really been advancement, any actual steps, let alone indictments in Georgia lately. But the judge who did oversee the grand jury probe is dealing with something we actually covered when it first dropped, which was the Trump team's effort to argue that they'd been treated unfairly. We gave them their version of a hearing, a beat version of a hearing on that, Neil, which is a segment. But we heard from Drew Findling on this program, and he made the case. It seems that they're running into a brick wall there. And so while I don't think that tells us whether or not Georgia's going to indict, that's something that, as I've cautioned viewers, we have to just wait and see. What is your view of those Trump lawyers getting smacked down there on that piece of Georgia?
It's hugely significant, Ari, but before doing that, I just want to add to something David said about the January 6th stolen documents Mar-a-Lago investigation. This employee, Yuscil Taveras, was not just had a lawyer that was paid for by Donald Trump, it was the same lawyer that Walt Nuda had. And at that point, and Walt Nuda has been indicted for this crime, as I was saying a moment ago, for these alleged crimes a moment ago. And so what happened here is that that lawyer who was representing them both realized he had a conflict of interest. These two defendants may have adverse interests. And that's what led Taveras to get another lawyer. So it wasn't just the payment stream. It was actually the lawyer himself was thick in it representing another defendant. And once Taveras got a new lawyer, then all of a sudden his story changed. And that's what the superseding indictment's about. The fact that Taveras has now come before the grand jury and has said something very different about the deletion of evidence. So that's why I think it's so significant. With respect to Georgia, you're absolutely right. Donald Trump has tried every trick in the book to try and get this prosecutor, Fani Willis, removed. It went up to the Georgia Supreme Court at one point, and then today they refiled it and they lost that again. Another challenge saying that Fani Willis, the district attorney, has to be removed from the case. And so I think Donald Trump is learning the hard way that bad legal arguments typically receive bad results. He's getting a bad result. It looks like the Georgia case is heading toward an indictment.